Hi, welcome to the Dr. F Show. It's always a pleasure having you on my show, and I hope you're keeping safe wherever you are. We know we're having challenges at the moment, but we pray that everything goes well with you and your family. Now, in the studio today, I'm so pleased that finally I've managed to drag Dr. Lynne Pezzullo. Dr. Lynne Pezzullo has traveled all the way from Canberra to Townsville. What a dedication. What an honor to have you on the show, Dr. Lynne Pezzullo. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much. 5 hours in a mask on a plane. You do need a breast mint at the end of it.
You have to do the right thing. And although I appreciate you coming to the show, it's quite a great honor to have you on the show.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you.
I know. And I've been daring to have you on the show and looking at your career path and what you have done over the years, over 20 years, I think. Yes. You just said off the camera.
Yeah.
Now, I'll take you back.
Yes.
To where it all started.
Right.
You went to Adelaide University, that's right?
That's right. So I did a Bachelor of Economics with honours at Adelaide University and majored in international economics, actually.
International economics.
I moved to Canberra after my degree and worked in a few different government departments, so Foreign Affairs and Trade, the Treasury, during the Banana Republic days. And also did some work in AusAid, which is now part of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in women's, particularly women and development issues.
Right, that's right. So that was international economics.
Yes.
And then you now did a PhD. You just completed?
Yes.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's in health economics.
It is.
What was your thesis on? Yeah.
My thesis is actually called Best Practice Guidelines in Cost of Illness Methodology, which is about how you cost diseases and the different methods that people use to cost all sorts of things like diabetes, heart conditions, particular vision disorders, hearing loss, and there's a lot of debate about how to do that and how to do it well, and lots of different numbers floating around. But it makes a lot of difference because a lot of public policy, a lot of health policy is based on how much the government thinks it can save if it can prevent a case of a particular condition.
That's a good approach, isn't it? If you can prevent it in the first place, then maybe you can save some monies and you have a healthier population, which is a more productive population. The healthier the population, the better, isn't it?
It is.
So the approach is very good. And how do you cost these diseases? For instance, chronic diseases, which is your passion.
Yes.
Mental health as well. How do you cost those things?
Well, they have three different elements. So they have what we call the direct health system costs, which are quite tangible and usually the easiest to measure. So your hospital system costs, GP costs, allied health and so forth, pharmacy. The second set of costs are your productivity losses and carer costs. And in some particular countries, that's quite significant. For example, if you're looking at the cost of vision loss, for example, an artisan in India who can no longer see because they've got a cataract or have got a refractive error problem which cannot even be corrected with lenses because they can't afford a pair of glasses. Those sorts of things, they have to stop working, and there's no social security. So that productivity loss issue is quite important. And then the third sort of sets of costs are the actual loss of well-being, because illness has a huge intangible element in that it has a mortality element. People die. They die from cancer. They have terrible morbidity sometimes from
quality
things.
Of life,
So how to measure those costs accurately, and in the past people just tried to ignore them because it was almost too hard to measure. But over the years we've developed better methods, so that's what the thesis is about.
Well, I remember in my times in medical school, that is subject people, we hated that. We thought, no, I don't want to know anything about that. But it's very important that we know the burden of the disease for the economy. It's very important.
It is.
And it's just such an area you've done so much research on.
Because whenever you're trying to prioritise particular interventions, so say you're trying to work out a screening program for bowel cancer for the Department of Health, or the cost effectiveness of a vaccine prevention program or an HPV program or something like that, then you actually need to know the value of the benefit that you're going to get from across the population. And obviously you're going to need to know the cost of the intervention itself and then compare them.
Yes.
So it helps you make decisions about the cost effectiveness of particular interventions, because the budget is not unlimited, unfortunately.
That's right. And with that passion, that led you to working for the World Health Organization, you were an advisory group?
Yeah, I did have quite a passion in the area of vision loss. So I was working on the eradication of preventable blindness with the World Health Organization and with the wonderful Professor Hugh Taylor, who many people may know in that area, and still have a colleague of good friends in the Vancouver group, we called ourselves, in that particular area. But I've moved on to a lot of different things.
That's right, I can
since
see
then.
that.
Yes.
I was trying to, when I was preparing for the show, I was trying to put you in a box. I couldn't put you in a box. You're all over the place, right? you got your feet, your hands everywhere. You got so much passion, like in mental health, for instance, women's health, for instance, indigenous health, and drug addiction, domestic violence, you name it. You're just all over the place.
Yes.
You just have the passion to do those things. What drives you? What drives you to do all those things?
Well, I do believe that a lot of them are related. So a lot of the social determinants of health cause all sorts of different complicated interrelated issues. So wellness is about physical health, mental health and spiritual well-being. And I think, to get that right, you do end up doing a lot of different things. When I was working, for example, with currently I'm working with the farm in Geelong, which is a recovery centre for women who have been through experiences of complex chronic trauma together with substance abuse. And they've experienced domestic violence, they might have experienced child abuse, they might have had these drug and alcohol issues, there might have been a criminal element involved with their partners, they might have had their children taken away from them. So when you have that multiple complex trauma, of course you have to look at social issues in a more comprehensive context.
So hopefully maybe when you come up with the numbers, then you can inspire the policymakers to make some change, or to introduce or institute some interventional techniques, maybe change the social policy a bit. But they need that data, and that data comes from the health economics.
So I'm thinking of another example in the late noughties with Professor Pat McGorry, who is again famous psychiatrist in Australia, who helped, who asked me to set up the business case for Headspace. Which the evidence was just so compelling. There was like an 8-to-1 return on investment in terms of the dollars saved. But it was so difficult to get that investment because government priorities have to be the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. They don't have the money to put the fence at the top of the cliff. That's right. There was a lot of difficulty in getting that funding through until you could prove the economic benefit. Yes.
And I've seen that you also do Well and Wise.
Yes.
What's this about?
It's a catch-all company. When I finished, I finished up at Deloitte after 20 years with Deloitte and Access Economics in health economics and social policy consulting. And while I absolutely loved my time there, I just felt that 2 decades was enough, and hitting the big 5-5, it was time to move on. And so it's a sort of company that houses a whole lot of different things that I do. I actually did a personal training degree in the 12 months since I finished, and a nutrition coaching course, and finished my PhD, and started advising the National Disability Insurance Agency, and I'm on a few boards for the Social Research Centre, for example, which is one of the ANU enterprises.
That's right.
So there's like a gamut of different things, as well as being on the not-for-profit boards like the Farm in Geelong and the Canberra Hospital Foundation. Yeah,
that's fine. That's good. I mean, going back to Deloitte, your time at Deloitte, I mean, you were one of the founders of one of the programs there?
So what actually happened was, when I have 4 children, so I came back from maternity leave and thought, do I want to go back into international economics? We've kind of done everything. Like, we've liberalised, we've harmonised, we've customised. There's not a lot more to do in the Asia Pacific region in that particular field. And I thought, well, what will be next? And I looked at the world and thought, well, we've got an ageing population. There's going to be this huge need for health economists.
That's right.
And I'd known my dear friend Chris Richardson and Roger Killam from Balance of Payments days back in the National Treasury. And so I gave them a call and I said, do you guys have a health economics practice at Access Economics? And they said no, and I said, would you like one? They said, why not?
Yeah.
So we started off, I worked with Roger and Chris initially, and it just grew very rapidly, based initially on that cost of illness work, but increasingly in acute care, pharmaceuticals. We had quite a large health technology assessment practice by the end, and then gradually branched into those different streams of social policy.
Right.
And I do have a particular passion in relation to domestic violence too, so I've done a lot of my not-for-profit work in that area, and also in conditions that affect children. So muscular dystrophy was another one that I've done a lot of fundraising hikes for example.
We'll come to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And your work with Deloitte, obviously, it was quite rewarding. You know, Telstra awarded you for Women of the Year.
Yes, in 2008.
Business Woman of the Year in 2008.
Yes.
How was that for you?
I think that was put sort of a pinnacle. I think it's hard, I think, coming back after you've been off work, looking after 4 small children for 5 or 6 years, and you come back to a world where there's this thing called the internet and Microsoft, and you'd left when you were literally on hard-frame computers. So it was a big transition back into the workforce. So to make that growth happen in that period of time, to do the transition from a small little health practice of 3 people to a global business, and then to obviously have Deloitte approach us in 2010 and to join the global Deloitte firm was fantastic. And then within a few months of joining, the CEO offered me the position of managing partner for Canberra, which was also a big experience because I hadn't run a tax practice before.
Did you see this coming in your life? Did you see, all your achievements? In other words, did you have a vision where you're going to be, where you are now?
I always loved economics. Like when I went to high school, I had an extremely inspiring year 11 economics teacher, and economics just made sense to me. You know, economics is how we use scarce resources to satisfy the world's unlimited wants and needs.
That's right.
And to me, that's really important because it's about justice. You know, it's about security. It's about equity. And most of all, it's important to care for each other. So I think we do that best if we can get that social optimization right.
Did you have a mentor in this? Somebody you're saying, I would like to be like so and so, or you got that inbuilt self-motivation?
My mother was a great mentor. She was also a PhD in psychology. Her thesis was on giving and receiving help.
Wow.
And she actually researched in Norway amongst the Lap people who are famous for not giving help. They sort of let their grandmothers die in the snow, and contrasting that and why people give help in different ways, and some do and some don't.
So this is coming from
she was definitely one of my and a woman of faith, an amazing woman of faith. Yes. Also, I think in my formative years, some of my mentors at Treasury and Foreign Affairs were significant people in my life, but unfortunately I never had any female mentors. I was often the first woman, I was the first female director of Access, the first female chair of the board, the first female managing partner of Deloitte, and it was just, never having those women mentors, I think, which I probably missed, but male mentors are pretty good too.
You told me earlier on you stumbled on medicine at some point.
My mother had a passion for me to be a doctor, and so my sister became a general practitioner, and I got the marks to get into medicine, but it really wasn't for me. I just
in a week.
I'm not good with blood or formaldehyde or things.
It's not always blood. It's not. No, that's okay.
I just realised that
you're doing medicine pretty much.
I'm doing health policy.
In another way.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good. I would like to call it applied economics.
Yes.
I was looking at this and I think this is applied economics. This is the hands-on. You are the practical person.
Yes.
You're not abstract. You believe in doing things.
Yes.
Which is very motivational.
Yes.
Now, talking about the women, there's gender inequality, and women are
Yes.
struggling. Some have got a lot of things to do. They've got huge families, there's marriage issues, and yet they want to achieve things, or they want to do,
Yes.
let's say, for instance, putting you as a model, say, they want to do
Yes.
like you've done. How do you motivate those women? We're facing all these challenges, and looking at the family, juggling careers and all that. How do they do the work balance? I know you've written a book on this work
Yes,
balance and
yes.
balancing out the lifestyle. You have juggled all the balls very well.
Yes, thank you.
Well,
I'm not sure. I think I dropped a few at times.
But how do you do this work-life balance?
Well, the book was actually called Reality Check. And it was we did a big survey of 1,000 people, so quite a significant sample size, looking at how women spend their time. And actually subsequently to that, I've done another study with Deloitte for the Victorian government, which showed exactly the same results 10 years later. So, and what it shows is that women tend to do, if you're looking at all the paid and unpaid work, so domestic work, childcare, volunteer work, paid work, women probably do about 12 to 15% more hours of work, and men have 12 to 15% more hours of leisure and sleep. So I think it is more of a burden, perhaps, but it is something that women often choose. They like to do different things. Men tend to like to specialise. That is a huge generalisation.
Yes,
but it was just a tendency that we saw in the survey, was that women tend to have more concern to care for their elderly, ageing mother with dementia, for example, than a man would. So it might often be the daughter-in-law rather than the son who would be doing the caring or taking the time off. There might be more desire to spend time, out there in the volunteer workforce doing Bunnings fundraisers. So those are the sorts of things I think that we found. But I'm not sure that's here to stay. I think it's something that is gradually changing. And to be honest, I've really embraced the change. I was an absolute mentor in Deloitte for parental leave that was equal between males and females, and that the males could take it at any time that they wished. So that the females might want to take their parental leave immediately after the child was born, and then the males could take their 4 months or 8 months of parental leave part-time down the track, which has been such a great model in terms of actually encouraging the males to work 4 days a week and females to work 4 days a week, whereas before we used to have 100% of our women take up their maternity leave and about 15% of our men take up their parental leave. So just reforms like that can make a real difference.
So what do you do with pressure? Pressure of doing all this, do you sleep? It looks like you've got more than 24 hours than anybody else. I mean, being a director, I can imagine being called for meetings, and maybe you want to edit these reports, and you got to go home. And how do you juggle all this?
Well, I do enjoy exercise. I think exercise is a really important part of life. I love skiing, I love running on my treadmill, or walking, particularly walking in the mountains and doing hikes. So I've climbed Mount Kilimanjaro and hiked the Kokoda Trail in Papua New Guinea, and climbed in Nepal to raise money for muscular dystrophy, and in Mount Tubkal, which is the second highest mountain in Africa, and around the European Alps, and just in Latin America. I just would really love hiking.
And you call this paying back to the community. That's what you say.
Well, there's a huge benefit to fundraising tourism. I mean, people like to hike and be out in the open, so why not do it for a good cause?
Well, that's good. That's very good. So you got life at work and then life outside work. Absolutely. And you put a clear demarcation there.
No, I think actually it's not a clear demarcation. I think what I am is a multitasker, and when I was doing my work on Reality Check, I discovered there are lots of different ways that people deal with this. So one way is segmentation. The people that will not take their phone or their laptop home on the weekend, and they just won't even wear a suit on Casual Friday, so they will have to wear a suit on a Casual Friday.
Right.
So there's the segmenters that don't like to mix work and life. There are the multitaskers who get their phone out while they're in the shopping queue holding the baby and talk about, and do a work call, and there's a scream in the background and someone throws a small car in your head. That's actually happened to me.
Is that you now?
Yeah. And there are the compensators. So I'm a bit of a compensator, which is to provide a reward for yourself that you look forward to, so that on a Friday night you can go and have a nice manicure or something that is a bit of a treat that is a reward for whatever you've achieved in that week. Yeah.
Going back to the gender inequality, you said you're one of the female directors.
Yes.
How was the challenge? How do you deal with that challenge? Maybe negativity, some people overlooking you, that you're a woman, you know, kind of thing. How were you dealing with that emotionally yourself?
Look, I think it wasn't so much of an issue for me. I think I was just coming through the era where the glass ceiling was starting to move. So I wouldn't say it was affirmative action, but I didn't find that I hit the ceiling, except a couple of times when, for example, I couldn't go back to work at Foreign Affairs and Trade after I'd had my third baby because they wouldn't accept me working part-time. They said, no, you can't work part-time at your level. It's too difficult. It's impossible for women to do that. So there were some times where I experienced it, but I think it was about finding other options and other pathways, and then also throwing myself into making the world better for women because of the major issues. And domestic violence is still very much one of those, and one that has gotten a lot worse with COVID. So there is a program that we set up in Canberra, which is called Assistance Beyond Crisis, which just provides microfinance loans for women. And it can be like 5,000 Australian dollars to just get them past that stage where they can get out of the domestic violence situation, because about 50% of them would end up back with the abusive partner because they couldn't buy a fridge or pay a bond, you know, and all they would need is an interest-free loan for a few years, and they could actually get out of those situations. So, you know, to set up microfinance facilities for women escaping domestic violence, I think there are lots of things that the community can do that aren't that hard to do if you can put your mind and your energy to it.
I mean, talking about the pandemic at the moment now, we're beginning to see the ripple effect of it, and this is going to go for years. We talk about psychosocial economic impact of the disease. I mean, losing the loved ones, or maybe the breadwinner dies, for instance. In some other countries, we've been lucky in Australia, but in some other countries it's a huge impact, and there's not enough services to support the emotional part of this. I mean, you're talking about some other numbers, but you look immeasurable effects, which is emotional. There's depression, anxiety, there's substance misuse, everything, like you're talking about domestic violence and all that stuff. These are all the ripple effects of this. How do you think health economics can jump in on this?
So there is probably an optimal level of intervention that we'd never studied. So in different countries, they did it in completely different ways. So in the UK, last night on the news, 30,000 new cases a day, and they've taken down all the restrictions. So you're thinking, well, I think you've probably gone too far on the cost side of the cost-benefit equation in terms of, you know, having people dying from the virus. But we in Australia, I think, have possibly erred too far on the other side. I think the implications and the ramifications of the numbers of young people who have been out of work, of the number of the cases of suicide we've had since the pandemic, and these are typically of younger people, far exceed the deaths from the COVID virus. So I don't think we've done the health economics very well in either of those two countries. I think there's probably a happy medium somewhere if there'd been a bit more analysis to start with about possible scenarios. But the thing with pandemics is you never really know how they're going to turn out. You don't know when you get a vaccine if you are. You know, you don't know if it's going to work. You don't know if there's going to be a new viral strain that's worse than the first one. You don't know a whole lot of things about whether the vaccine will actually still be able to transmit the disease, or whether, you know, so it's very, very difficult to predict how to do the restrictions to start with.
I know it's a very tricky one. Is it at whole point give people money, or give them some other ways of sustaining themselves? Because you give them money, again, they just squander it and the government asks for more money.
Yes.
Or should we retrain them? That intervention better, retrain them, people become, self-sustaining in a sense. Or maybe it could be a job retraining, for instance.
Yes.
You lost a job, let's say in accounting, for instance.
Yes.
You're going to want to do mechanics.
Yeah.
Want to do something different.
Yes.
It's good fun to try something else different.
Australia did very well in terms of job seeker and job keeper. Those were good initiatives. Certainly, and the massive spending in the economy has certainly kept the economy
in good
purring along, whereas that certainly has not been the case in other countries which didn't put in that sort of investment. No. And the debate, of course, there is always about the amount of foreign debt that we rack up as a result. Now, because I did work in balance of payment section during the Banana Republic days, I'm not so scared of debt as perhaps others might be, but I'm also conscious that we do need to think about debt servicing and how we go about generating an export sector to support that foreign debt going forward.
We've got enormous resources. We get coal, got iron, all those minerals. There's lots of resources to pay that.
Yeah, there's some good commodities. There's a market. Yeah. My son is a fan of thorium. Australia has one of the largest suppliers of thorium, which is an alternative to nuclear power, and we could be doing amazing things like that.
Right. Now I'm going to ask you something very specific, isn't it? Throughout your career, I mean, there's been turmoils, ups and downs, challenges, and everything. Yes. And I know that as a woman of faith, you're a Christian, an active Christian. Yes. I'm also a Christian, and so is the other guy who's there. He's a Christian too. I mean, how would you match it up, or what you have achieved? Yes. And match it up with your Christian faith? Yeah,
I think it's the driving force behind what I have chosen to do. I think I found faith in my 20s. Before I found it, I was headed straight for the financial markets to make as much money as I could, which is, I guess, something that economists and financial specialists do. Yeah. But no, to pour it into community work and assisting those less privileged and to try to make the world a better place becomes much more of a priority, I think, when you follow the ultimate social justice mentor, who was Jesus. Yeah.
That's good. That's very good. Right. So, you got. I mean, we can talk forever. Yeah. There's other areas I didn't even touch. About some things you do, I didn't even touch. Yes. I won't touch now, but that's fine. Is there anything you can say to the people watching you?
Yeah, so I think we've got some big problems still to look at. We've talked about a lot of them in terms of mental health is a huge one. Yes. And domestic violence and sexual abuse. But I think there are two we haven't talked about at all. One is aged care and one is disability services. So
and homelessness. You do also homelessness.
Yes, I do. So the CEO sleepouts in Canberra at -5 degrees, I did them for 5 years. I think when you do them in Townsville, it's just not fair because it's just like camping. It's not like getting cold and icy.
How was the experience for you?
It was really, really cold, being sleeted on and having cardboard and nothing to cover you. I got sick every time I did it, but it was worth it, and we did raise a lot of money for homeless people, so that was very, very good as well, through St Vincent de Paul. But national disability is a huge area, so it's one of the fastest growing areas in our budget in Australia, and our services for people with disabilities still have a long way to go in terms of achieving choice and control. And then aged care. I mean, we've seen what's happened in aged care facilities with COVID and the inability of people to see their loved ones, which has really been of detriment to their mental health in the elderly. And it is a huge problem in countries which have significant demographic ageing problems like China. How are they going to fund their aged care? Will euthanasia become a policy? They've adopted the 3-child policy now, which is fantastic, but there is a lot of financial burden in the demographic ageing problem that we have. Yes, and we're finding now even better treatments to prolong life even further. So I was working on a treatment that could extend life to 120 years. I know. So once we start getting into that territory, we have to deal not with issues that are like dementia, that are neurological, but also significant musculoskeletal deterioration as well. So we really need to think that one through and put a lot of research in there.
So post-retirement, if ever you're going to retire,
yes.
what's your plan?
Yes, I'm supposed to be retired.
You're supposed to retire?
I retired from professional services, and I think I'm working similar sorts of hours, probably 11, 12-hour days, a lot of days. But I do enjoy it. Like, I think I do more of the things I love in post-retirement. I don't have to do the legal stuff, the HR stuff, some of the problem sorting, the administration, and I get to do to spend my time doing passionate things like talking with you.
Coming to the show.
Yeah. And I've actually just started a new business with some colleagues from my church, which is called Dining Domes. So I'm going to give them a little plug. I'll just pop that earring back in.
That's okay.
And it's a fantastic new concept of having polycarbonate dining spaces, which work particularly well in Scandinavia and cool climates, to have as special eating areas, but you can also use them for glamping and camping.
Who came up with that long name? I was trying to Dome Dining
Dome?
Hotel.
Yeah, Bubble Hotel.
Yeah, Bubble Hotel. What a long name.
Yeah. But it's really easy to remember, I think. And it's also a great brand. So we've got Dining Dome at the Dock in Canberra now. We've got Dining Dome at Lake George Winery. We're going to have a few more Dining Domes in other places very shortly. And so, yes, I think it'll catch on.
So that's your success in business and success in career-wise. You've done lots of things. Any regrets? Any things you look back and say, oh no, I wish I hadn't done this. How did you come out of it?
That's a really difficult question. I think there were times, like because of having 4 children, there were times where I was having to make choices about, how do I get to the 10 o'clock school cross-country run and get back to the 11 o'clock meeting. And I think I wish I'd spent a little bit more time thinking through those aspects so that I could fully give myself and be fully present. So that's probably one area that I'd focus on. And the other thing is that, just getting back to the faith journey, I think I didn't get to do the practices that I now practice every day, like, Bible reading and praying and singing and serving, which I missed out on a bit of in those days. So being a mother with the little children, not being available all the time for them, let's say go for school meetings, for instance. So you regret that time. I mean, it was just every now and then my husband's executive assistant and my executive assistants would be talking to each other to work out who could pick someone up from soccer. And then there was this one weird time where we both ended up in London together and hadn't even realised that we were going to be in London for the same 2 days. I had to change my hotel. Because our calendars were so difficult to sync up. So I think those things.
It's amazing how you can just indulge, in the career. You're hungry, but you forget of other things sometimes. It does happen.
It is that juggling thing. Because sometimes you do lose a few balls.
That's why you need to pull out. Just happens to everybody, even myself. You have to pull out every mentor. Somebody who can look from outside and say, oh, come on, you need to balance all this properly. Otherwise, you're just engrossed in this. You're passionate about this. I went through the same thing. I was in medical school. Young children, they're all flown out now, apart from one 8-year-old who comes here. During that time, I think looking back now, when I'm talking to the kids now, that time was bad for me. Was studying, I could study for 12 hours, stretch, and they would make me coffee. Even going to make coffee myself, I found that is a waste of time. It was later on I attend their school meetings and stuff. So that time, you're not being a good parent. Looking back, And those are the best times of being a father or a mother, actually,
Yes.
when the children are home and you're having a good time.
Yeah.
But you miss out because they're just in the careers,
Yes.
and inadvertently they fly off,
Yes.
and they don't come back.
Yes.
They're gone off the nest, you see.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are some, the warning one where I've gone through that as well.
Yes.
I know it's quite a challenge.
Yes, there's always
Yeah.
going to be a few minor
Yeah.
regrets. And there are things I didn't do at work because of the children too,
Yeah.
so it works both ways.
Yeah.
But the one thing I would say that I've learnt is, I have a little acronym for it,
What?
distract daily,
Distract.
withdraw weekly, and abandon annually.
Abandon annually.
Yeah, so just,
What?
you've got to go away once a year and just abandon and have some retreat time.
Regardless.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
have your distract time each
Yeah.
day daily from
Family outings.
or
Yeah.
just time for yourself and time for the people who are most important that you love in your life.
Very good.
Very good.
What a nice way to conclude this.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Lynne Pezzullo, thank you so much. I appreciate that you've come to the show, and we wish you the best in your retirement. Enjoy it. We thank you for what you do for the community, for what you do for yourself, and you're just an inspirational person. You give talks, and you do a radio, TV show, ABC
Yes.
channel. You're a spokesperson there.
Yes,
And
yeah.
you do amazing things in terms of health, and we really appreciate what you do.
Oh,
and I wish
thank
you the best,
you.
and God bless you, and you and your family, and everybody who has supported in your life.
Thank you,
And, we
Dr.
pray
Davey. I'm
for
very
good health.
grateful for those
That's
people.
so good. And everybody else, thank you so much for joining us. And you can follow Dr. Lynne Pezzullo. She's available online if you want to know more about her. And she's amazing. She's a source of inspiration. And we thank you. And God bless you. Look after yourself wherever you are. Bye-bye for now.